Eat afterwards, just people that aren't able to touch it.
That one needs to be on
Yes.
this. That one.
Yeah, that's good. How do you? You don't know, bro. What is it? You don't know.
That needs 6 to
Hmm?
that one.
You have the, I don't know. You have the
Anyone? So, first I would like to thank the coordinators for inviting me here. It's a privilege and an honor to speak before you regarding these matters. My name is Asadullah Ali Al-Andalusi. I am a fellow for the Yaqeen Institute for Islamic Research. And, before you, who is concerned about certain matters facing our community that I wish to discuss with you and your youth across this country. My profession is not really geared towards these sort of discussions, but maybe you'll get to know me a little bit better if you know what I do for a living. I'm actually a professional librarian, which you think is quite a boring position, but I find it to be very exciting.
Leave it at
tell you
that
I don't have much of an exciting life. But because of that profession, I am deeply engaged with education. I'm deeply engaged with youth, especially at the university level. Actually, youth counselor, which brought me to a number of realizations that I wish to share with you. So, over the course of the last couple of years, I've been attending a number of MSAs and youth organizations. And some of the things that the Muslim youth approach me with have not only been shocking, but at the same time enlightening. So I wish to share some of those stories with you, and then we can go into the substance of this lecture. So one of the more shocking things that I have experienced over the course of those years are the number of young boys and girls aged between 13 to 18 who have openly declared their apostasy to me. And I'm talking within the hundreds. Okay? However, at the same time, they have also declared to me that they are hufad, they are hafiz of the Quran. They are leading prayers in the masjid. They are engaged in madrasa, education. Okay? And they are still leading that life, while simultaneously declaring their apostasy. Now, of course, they're not open about it, but they've shared it with me because of their concerns. They don't understand why they don't believe. They don't understand why they don't love Islam. They don't understand why they don't believe in God. And there are a number of concerns that they have that they feel have never been addressed. Then among that group are some, believe it or not, who have approached me confused about their sexual identity. Concerned that they're not normal because they're attracted to the same sex, or they think they are. Some have also approached me discussing issues of abuse among family members. Some have also approached me discussing issues of sexual abuse, molestation, harassment by their fellow brothers and sisters in faith. And you're probably wondering how I was able to come across all of these stories and why those individuals had confided in me. Well, it has a lot to do with my own past and my ability to connect with these kids, as I was not Muslim before. I reverted to Islam, alhamdulillah. And I'm able to open up to these kids, and I give them a safe space to discuss these issues. But the number of children, teens, and young adults who I've engaged with in the United States who declare themselves to be Muslim openly but are not so, or are confused or do not understand what it means to be Muslim is dramatic and alarming, to say the least. And the first question that comes to mind as to why or how so many of these concerns are brought up, so many of these doubts, the number one question that comes in my mind is, why are they talking to me? Why aren't they talking to their parents? Why aren't they talking to the imams, their sheikh, the scholars? Why are they talking to me? I'm nobody. And then I ask them this question, because I say this, I say, I'm nobody. Okay? I have some knowledge, but I'm compared to these people, I'm nothing. Why are you talking to me? And the same answer, I get the same answer from every single one of them. They're scared to tell their parents. They're scared to tell the imam. They're scared to tell the sheikh. They're scared to tell their scholars. They're scared to be shamed. They're scared no one will understand them. And they feel as though even when they give clues, the first reaction is either anger or isolation. And this is almost across the board. Of course, everyone has differing experiences. Not everyone is the same. But generally speaking, this is the same answers that I've received. So, as a result, I decided that it would be best to take this program that I've sort of developed. It's not really a program, but sort of the experiences that I've developed, and sort of to make them universal. Maybe to start implementing them across the Ummah in the United States. And that is to sort of bridge the gap between the generations. To bridge that gap so that we can start relieving these doubts and these concerns that our youth have. And to start bringing them back to our tradition, to our religion, in a much healthier and more productive manner. So, the substance of this talk, I want to break up into three portions. The first being is, what is the mentality and the perspective of many of our youth here in the United States and in other Western countries, especially second generations. And then I want to discuss the reactions that they faced and how we can resolve that. And then I want to discuss directly to the youth who are present here today, with respect to how they treat their parents and how they see their parents. I want to try to be as balanced as possible here, because it's not always the parents' fault, and it's not always the child's fault. Usually it takes two to tango. Sometimes there is disagreement on both ends and misunderstanding that needs to be resolved. Not everyone has the same experience, so I also want to make a disclaimer here that I'm not talking about everyone, but generally what I've seen and what I've heard and what I've experienced. So the first thing I think that many of the older generation need to understand, especially those of you who immigrated here. My family are also immigrants. I'm of Spanish descent though. My family's from Europe. But I do understand the immigrant experience to some extent as a child of immigrants who was born here. But what many parents need to understand from that background especially is that the children they raise here are in many ways going to be Western or Westernized. They're going to have Western ideas, Western perspectives. Now some of you consider that to be a negative, and I understand. As someone who grew up in a secular household prior to becoming Muslim, I quite understand the problems of having that mindset, especially when it's taken to extremes. However, there are also positive aspects of Western culture. And there are certain elements of Western culture that they're going to consume, and it's going to become a part of their essence, regardless of whether you want them to or not, because they're going to live here. They're going to live among the population. They're going to see Western media. They're going to speak Western languages. they're going to have certain elements about them that are Western. There's nothing you can do about that because this is where they live. What we should be concerned about is what aspects are still within the confines of Islam and what aspects are not. Right? So in many ways, your children, those born and raised here, are Western in many respects. They are Western Muslims. I'm a Western Muslim as well. Actually, my ancestors were Western Muslims. My ancestors are from Andalus, right? So they were Western Muslims. It's okay to be Western to some extent. It is very okay to be Western. And certain qualities of being Western, for example, being extremely assertive, individualistic to the point of ingenuity, okay? To the point of thinking for yourself where the truth matters more than what your culture tells you. Right? These are certain aspects of Western culture that we can value. And of course, there are other aspects that are extremely problematic. I think we know what those are. Such as the extreme sense of individualism, anti-family, this idea that one's independence is what makes them strong, what makes them actually a part of society, okay? Being away from their family. This is a very negative aspect of Western culture. I think we've seen it today, especially. The more liberal this culture becomes, the less family is focused on and regarded as valued. And the more problems we see as a result of that, especially among our youth. More depression, more sense of loneliness, misunderstanding of marriage, seeing sex, material gain as being the primary reason to even be with somebody. This is problematic. But we can cultivate that individualism towards a positive path if we engage with it in a positive manner. So, for example, the worst way you can engage with your children who are influenced by Western culture is to ostracize or to be angry at certain ideas or doubts that they have. Because I'll tell you one thing about Western kids. The moment they see fear in their parents, the moment they see anger, or the moment they see a sense of, I don't want to talk about this, they become more attracted to the thing that you don't like. And they go down there and they go and search for it more and more and more. I'll give you some examples. I know many, many young men and women who had this very experience with their parents. And not only did they confide more in other people, but they confided in the wrong people. Some of them went to some, I can put my alhamdulillah, thank you, I can't breathe.
That's better.
Okay, so I was about to pass out. Another negative aspect of Western culture. Okay, anyways. So, some of them would go to great lengths to express their thoughts to extremes by involving themselves on social media in very negative ways. So, for example, they would often make anonymous accounts on Facebook or Twitter or Reddit, if you've heard of these platforms, or Instagram. And they would say horrible things about Islam, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay? They would advertise their beliefs to such an extent because they knew there were no consequences. And they would go to such extremes, I mean, they would commit blasphemy openly, of course, behind anonymous accounts. First, it started off just as a fear of people finding out what they believed. But then, because of that anonymity right, they felt more emboldened to express themselves in more extreme manners. And social media tends to exacerbate that problem, right? Because everything on social media is exaggerated. You go on Twitter, and you see the most extreme beliefs on both ends. You never see the middle, because it's never advertised. It's not good marketing. So you have to understand that unless you cultivate that individualism towards a more positive path, like, for example, learning more, seeking out answers, being able to be approached with for those answers, they won't go down towards those negative paths. In the same way, you have to understand that Western youth, although they express love for their parents and their families, they do have that sense of independence. And you cannot expect them to believe exactly as you do or to express themselves exactly as you do. Of course, we want them to follow the truth, and that's what we should always want for them. But we need them to go on their own journey. We cannot tell them what they need to know. We have to encourage that they find the answers for themselves. Read this book. Speak to this person. Okay? Why don't you go to this event? I'll take you there, my son. Right? Figure it out for yourself. Encourage this path of learning, of a journey where they can discover things for themselves. Because I can tell you right now, Western kids, they don't like being told, believe this, do this. That doesn't work. Because it will plant a seed of doubt very early on. Because they already have a red flag that goes up in their minds. And the more that's told to them, without any real reason, that they feel that they've discovered themselves, they will continue to rebel. It's normative, it's natural among Western youth. Yes, and Western Muslim youth. It's considered a value to rebel in Western culture. So that's the mentality that we're dealing with here. And I have to tell you, since we're talking about social media, I have to tell your parents here, if you don't know what your children are doing on social media, you don't know your children. If you do not know what your children are doing on social media, or even if they're on there, you don't know what your children are thinking or what they're doing. Now, I'm not asking you to invade their privacy entirely, but what I am trying to say is that you need to be aware of what platforms they're utilizing, when they're utilizing them, and how. Because I'll tell you right now, most of the doubts that our youth have are found and expressed on those platforms. And social media, especially for the youth, is extremely unhealthy. It's extremely unhealthy. And there's a number of reasons why. We have a number of studies on this. It's not just about self-esteem. It's about how social media presents the world. Remember I mentioned Twitter. Mentions two extremes. All platforms are like that because extremes get the best marketing. Breaking news, you hear that all the time. Breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. Even on the mainstream media today, it's all breaking news. I did a study on the idea of breaking news at one point. It's very exciting, right? And this whole idea of breaking news was actually such a rare thing around the 70s and 80s, actually. Many news channels they rarely said breaking news, actually. It was very rare when something was breaking. It was only breaking when it was like an emergency or something else. Nowadays, you turn on CNN, Fox News, and everything's breaking news. And it's like, oh, somebody's stole from a gas station or something, like 50 miles away. Or a pipeline broke somewhere, or there was a storm. Everything's breaking news. Nope, that's not good. Breaking news. Minor things, minor crimes are all breaking news. Everything's breaking news. It's all exaggeration. If you involve yourself on these mediums, over time, they delude you into thinking this is how the world works. For those of you who don't have social media, it's hard for you to understand that. But for those of you who do, that are consumed by it, get your news from it, you'll know this is how the world is presented constantly. Which is a challenge I like to give to the youth as well, and even adults. Try for a month not to use Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, just for a month. If you can't do a month, do 2 weeks. I promise you, you'll see the world differently. And I promise you, you won't be as stressed. Some of us say, we try to tell ourselves, well, we have to use it because, that's how we come, we know everything, right? We have to know the news from Facebook and Twitter and stuff. No, you don't. You don't have to. Most of the stuff you consume is useless. Is absolutely useless and irrelevant to your life. The only reason you consume is because you think you have to. That's what society's telling you. But I can tell you right now, there's so many young people who have become delusional about themselves and the world because they're constantly on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. Kids have committed suicide because of their perception of what social media is telling them about themselves. And I'm not super old, but I'm old enough to know when the internet wasn't around. And I happen to remember much happier times as a kid. Maybe that's nostalgia. But I don't recall ever seeing this many children depressed or wanting to kill themselves over such petty things. But I certainly urge you all to be aware of what your children are consuming online. Even if it seems benign, even if it seems innocuous, be concerned that they're consuming online. See who their friends are. Friends. Another reason to get off social media, you'll see who your real friends are. Who's going to message you if you're not online? Who's going to call you if you're not online for a month? I'll tell you about 99% of the people you're friends with don't even know you're there. Gone. They won't care. So this moves into, I think, my next point is the reaction, and I've noted this already. But we need to start cultivating a culture of approachability. Youth should not be scared to approach their parents, no matter the cultural divide, no matter the taboos. And I know some of this stuff's going to make you feel uncomfortable, but I have to mention it because it's a reality, especially in the society we live in. There's so much fitna in the society. Parents, you need to expect your children to feel certain ways, to have certain doubts, to have certain feelings. Okay? You have to expect these things because it's being fed to them constantly. Okay? And the first person they should want to approach is their mother or father. They should be the first people they want to approach. The people who raised them, who protected them since they were little. They should not be fearing their fathers and mothers about the doubts that they're having in their minds. If a young girl or boy is feeling confused about their sexuality, and they don't understand what Islam says about it, they don't understand how their parents see it, they don't understand if they're going to be loved, they need to be able to say to their fathers and their mothers that I'm confused. Help me, please. They shouldn't be shouted at. They shouldn't be ostracized. They need you. And if you don't have the answers, if you're scared that you don't have the answers, you need to be able to sit them down and tell them, I will find them for you. Even if it means I have to get somebody to come here and talk to you that knows more than I do. I know it's hard, especially some who come from certain places in the world where this stuff is never talked about. I understand. I do. You can't imagine that the youth in Pakistan or in Bangladesh or in other places in the world would say these things openly. Stuff over. But this is not those places. This is the United States. This is a Western country. They will face that fitna here constantly. You're living in one of the most liberal states in this nation as well. For example, this is where the homosexual LGBT movement originated. It was in the state. Or at least this is the headquarters. If you're going to live in California and you're not going to expect your children to be faced with that, I'm sorry. You need to open up. I know it's scary, but it could happen. And it's something that we need to address sincerely, openly with our kids if we love them, right? Even if we disagree. And of course we disagree. It's part of our religion not to approve of this sort of lifestyle. But they are our children. And if we truly want them to be part of the truth, to be in our family, we need to first sit there and say, okay, son, okay, daughter, let's talk. I'm here for you. Whatever you're feeling, I'm here for you. I want to talk to you. And I know it's difficult, but if you want your children to be close to you, to continue respecting you, to not rebel, and to lose their identity as Muslims, you need to be able to open yourself up that way. You have to. Because you are the source. You are really the source of who they are, in many respects, right? Not just biologically. But how they see themselves, they also see through you sometimes. They see through your approval and your disapproval. I should not be here. But unfortunately, I am. And I see this mentality even expressed openly on social media as well. Like I said, it's a place of extremes. But recently I did something really funny. As you all know, like in last month, the month before was Gay Pride Month or something. Is that correct? Everyone, I'm sure you're all aware of that. You saw the rainbows everywhere. Okay. And I happen to recall, it was quite funny to me, actually. There were a bunch of concerned parents who were taking pictures of Target. You guys, anyone go to Target? Anyone likes Target? Okay, I like Target. Great. So they were walking in, there was a kiosk, and it's like a little LGBT thing. They have like rainbows and stuff, right? And they're taking pictures of their stuff for the law. There's this, they're promoting LGBT now, right? And the first thing that came to my mind, I was like, yeah, okay, and what do you expect? It's a liberal company. You're living in a country that promotes homosexuality. It shouldn't be anything new. I mean, when you walk into Target, there's worse things that you see than rainbow flags. There's half-naked women all over the walls and other such things. You have to turn your gaze constantly when you're walking through these aisles, and you're concerned about rainbow flags? Influencing your children? There's much more zina out there than just the rainbow flags. We should be more concerned about the whole thing, right? I mean, let's be real. As parents living in this country, what do you expect when you walk into Target? You're going to see pictures of Mufti Meg on the wall saying, SubhanAllah. No, of course not. Right? And what I mean to say is that we should not, it's not that we shouldn't be concerned. What I'm trying to say is that the reaction that we give, the sort of fear, the sensationalism, it only showcases to the youth that we have no real rational answer to it. Being outraged is not going to help. As I said, the mentality of a Western child, a Western youth, is to rebel the moment they see fear. The moment they see that sensationalism, the moment they see being scared, right? Oh, there's something to this. Why are you taking pictures of this making a big deal of it? But they won't talk about the half-naked women on the walls. Why is it that they're so focused on the rainbow flags? Why are they so focused on the LGBT? Right? What do you think is going to happen? You think that your son or daughter's going, oh yeah, I agree. No. We cannot act as though, if Islam has all the answers and we truly believe it's a way of life, then let's just discuss with them. Your child walks through the aisle in Target, they see, oh, what is that rainbow flag? Well, have a rational discussion with your kids. No need to sensationalize. Right? I thought it was really funny, especially since we always tend to focus on certain things and others. Zina is so rampant in this country, and we're focused on rainbows. And the pornography in this country is beyond civilization has ever conceived. And you're worried about rainbows? There's a root problem there that we're missing. We should be talking about that first. You want to be angry because this movement now is just We need to be level-headed about these things. So, I do want to open for Q&A, but I want to discuss lastly with the youth.
You have some time.
Hmm?
You have more time.
How much time do we have?
All in all, about 14 minutes. It's actually
14 minutes?
4-0.
4-0, really?
Yes.
MashaAllah. I've been talking a little too fast.
All in all, so.
Okay, well, we can also open for Q&A. I'll try to do my best to extend it. Though. So, with the youth, I've been sort of attacking your parents. I'm not trying to attack your parents or the elders here. I've been focusing a lot of attention. And I do want to say that it's not intentional. I want to be balanced as possible because I do believe that the youth also have a problem with engaging with their parents. Okay? I understand your grievances. I understand your concerns. I understand the frustrations you have with your parents. But I want you to think about something. So Islam, and the Quran specifically, emphasizes respect to parents. Okay? And when we read that, I think many of us gloss over it. As a Western youth myself, at one point, right? When I came to Islam, actually, that was the first. When I read that, I was like, okay, I respect the parents. Okay. I didn't really understand. But the more and more I learned, it started to make more sense. But it didn't truly hit me until I became a father myself. Just very recently. And I now understand how every parent sees their child. How every parent sees their child. And I know this to be fact, because I cannot imagine the parents in this room did not have the same feeling, the same experience that I had when their child was born. When my daughter was born, the first thing that I experienced, and that image burned in my mind, was that I didn't exist anymore. My life was hers. And I will tell you this, she's still very young, but I know for a fact that I will have that same feeling about her as she grows older, until she is 18, 20, 19, 20, 21. I will remember that day when she was that little thing, and that feeling came out of me. And I always see her in that light. Doesn't matter how old she is, she will always be that little child that I will give everything to. And I know for a fact that every father in here has seen and experienced the same thing when they see their child for the first time. And for the mothers, I don't know, but I'm sure it's 10 times greater than that. When the Quran says to respect your parents, it doesn't mean simply to be nice to them. It's to acknowledge that you're everything. And to appreciate it. You will never know the parent's love until you become one. And as harsh as they may be, as stubborn as they may be, as angry as they may be at you in that moment where you're fighting with each other, and you're screaming at each other, no, 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 yes, yes, yes. I promise you that your mother and father, if you're still blessed to have them, the moment they go to bed or before they rise, the first image they have of their daughter or their son is that one, even if it's brief, because that's how they remember you forever. I know this because I experienced it. And I know every father looking me in the eye right now has seen it too. And they know exactly what I'm talking about. If I could get some acknowledgement of that, every single man in here raised nodded their heads, sisters. Every grown man in here has nodded their heads, and some of them are teary-eyed. So I ask you, the youth, even though you're having these issues, and I am here for you. I'm here to fight on your account. But think of your parents, no matter how stubborn they may be to you, they don't understand you, yes, but they love you. And you have to find a way to connect with them as best as you can, even if it is the most difficult thing. Because at the end of the day, if you truly want them to understand you and to support you, you have to be part of that. You can't just expect them to walk into your room one day and just say, okay, let's sit down and have this discussion. I knew I was wrong. It said, no, there is a part of you that has contributed to that. And you need to acknowledge it and take responsibility. To some extent, it was your fault too. And I understand being young and you want to rebel. You want to be your own person. But you are here because of your parents, not simply as a biological organism. Every breath you took, they watched when you first came out of your mother's womb. They did not think that you owed them anything. Some parents may say that to make you angry, put you in your place. But I promise you that they felt like they owed everything to you at that time. And you would not be sitting here today if they did not have that feeling. So be gracious with them. Be as kind as you can. Because if we're really going to resolve these issues in our ummah, especially in the West, we need to bring that gap together, but both parties have to contribute. Not just the parents, but the youth as well. You want your parents to be involved in your issues and your concerns, you have to invite them. And I know you're scared, but together, it's possible. So in conclusion, I want to give some recommendations to how we can start to alleviate some of the doubts among the youth and their concerns and try to bridge this gap. I am here because I am hoping to invest in this ummah, in a number of masajid across the country about starting up programs where we can start to bring these youth out of the shadows. You start bringing parents and youth together, scholars, imams, to start addressing these concerns and these issues, not behind the scenes, but in the open public. Okay. And what I mean to say is not that we want people to announce everything to the world. What I'm trying to say is that we need programs, counseling programs within masajid across the country where parents and youth can get together to discuss their concerns with either trained counselors or imams or scholars. And there are actual scholars and imams who are willing to engage and also facilitate these sort of programs. Whether it's bringing people like myself or others, to assist in that, whether it's creating groups or organizations, we need to start bringing these doubts to the fore in such a way that we no longer are trying to figure out which of our youth are struggling with atheism, which of them are struggling with their sexuality, which of them are struggling with this concern or that concern, which of them are becoming extreme in their positions. Something I didn't mention earlier in the talk. Social media also exacerbates extremist ideas. In fact, just to give you a personal anecdote and then we'll move on. I actually used to work for a Dawah organization a couple of years back in Chicago, and I knew a brother there for quite some time, and we were pretty good friends. And I remember seeing his son, beautiful kid, very smart, 12 years old. And his dad wanted to become an engineer. And, he was talking about great things, sent him to college, all these things. Good kid, honest, good kid. And I saw him grow up, 13, 14, still a really good kid. Always listened to his parents. And then I went overseas, studied in Malaysia. I got a phone call, one of my friends. Hey, you remember your friend Abdurrahman? I said, yes. His son was caught at the border trying to join ISIS. I thought he was joking. What are you talking about? This innocent kid who just, why? Apparently he met somebody online. They were talking for quite some time. He was involved with Palestine issues and things like this, and then one thing led to another. He was convinced to go to Syria, and that was it. 18 years old, he's in jail for the rest of his life. For what? His parents didn't know. They didn't think he was doing this stuff. They didn't even bother to look at his accounts. See who he was talking to. His life's over. For what? He had no one to talk to. He had no one to talk to. He's talking to some anonymous profile online for years, who convinced him to go. Why couldn't he talk to his father? It's a dangerous world we live in. There's a lot of fitna. We need to be aware. The only way we can be aware is if we're in touch with our kids. We can't just tell them things and expect them to just do it. We have to be involved in their lives, engaged. We have to understand where they're coming from and why they think the way they do. And if they approach us, just listen to them, please. Some examples, they're extreme. But other times, it could be something small. But even that can build over time, if you think about it. Many young kids I've met who, nobody gave me this answer about this hadith. They just kept telling me to shut up. Eventually they become hadith rejectors. They become Quranists. And they become something else. They become this and this. And finally they're atheists. Gradual process. It takes one thing, right? Some go this way, some go that way. But inevitably, they go in a certain direction because nobody bothered to say, hey, okay, well, let me talk to you about it. Let's see if we can find an answer. If you want to do an experiment, when you go home tonight, everyone know what Reddit is? Young people in the audience, if your parents don't know what Reddit is, you can show them. It's a cesspool, but anyways. So, go to the ex-Muslim Reddit forum and see how many young 15, 16-year-olds, and even younger, are talking about, the imam never told me anything about this. I approached the scholars about this. They didn't say anything. They didn't give me an answer. My parents told me to be quiet. They all have the same stories. See how many people are subscribed to that forum. Thousands. Tens of thousands. Young boys and girls saying the same thing. I didn't get answers. I don't believe in Islam because of this reason, and this reason. And you'll see a lot of disgusting things on there. Even anti-Muslim, not just anti-Islam, anti-Muslim things. Bigotry towards Muslims. It's disgusting. And it's all in the open. And they're all anonymous. They're all anonymous because either A, they're scared, people are going to find out, and many of them even claim that their own parents will kill them. Exaggeration? Perhaps. But how do we defeat an exaggeration? By showing that the norm is not what it is. Right? If there were more examples of the opposite, Perhaps that wouldn't be an exaggeration. Perhaps people wouldn't buy that as the truth. Correct? So there are things that we have to resolve. I think I've expended my time. That said, I do wish to say that I will be here for the entire weekend, including Monday. We'll be having some more events, especially an open Q&A with the youth, and also I will be doing an open Q&A with, or private sessions with parents. If you have concerns about your own kids or maybe somebody you know, you can also approach me in private. And inshallah, I do hope to be as much benefit as possible while I'm here. So, inshallah, if we have a Q&A, we can do that. And I just want to thank you all for listening. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, sir. Wa alaikum salam. I think that, especially since he's going to Islamic school, he may be also influenced by his friends not to be approaching you, because maybe their own experiences are more about fun, maybe he thinks that you will be a certain way. I'm not saying you will be, I'm just saying maybe that's his perception. I would honestly approach him, not with specifics, just asking people, is there anything that you have concerns with? Is there something that you've read, maybe you've heard? And, see if he opens up. And you just keep asking him over time. You don't have to. Oh, no. Let me promise you. He's getting ideas, he's getting them without your encouragement. I hear this a lot. I'm going to tell you right now, parents. If you're students, even if you're young boys and girls who go to university, if you're concerned about what they're getting at university, I promise you, they're already seeing it on the internet. Okay? You don't need to wait. If they're taking a philosophy course, that's not going to hurt them as much as what they've already seen on the internet. That's far worse. They're seeing these things constantly. I promise you. 12, 10, 11, it doesn't matter. They've seen things that you couldn't imagine. They haven't looked for it in things. What is that? My friend said this word today. What's that mean? So many things have popped up. And on social media, if you're Facebook or Twitter, the amount of images that they're seeing on a daily basis, there are things in their mind that they probably don't even understand comprehend. And it's eventually going to come out. We live in a country where, in a culture where we can't talk about these things. We have to because they will eventually do so on their own. There's somebody that you don't even know. Perhaps even a novelist who has ideas about converting into a different faith. We have to be open about this. But, for example, if you take a young boy to these stores and you see certain things, you're going to have to discuss with them eventually. You may as well, for me, the best defense is offense. The best defense is offense. Learn about what you're seeing, understand what it is, understand how to answer it. If you wait too long, they will find the answers on their own without your assistance. I promise you. You can't stick your head in the sand here in this culture. They will find it. It's impossible. Especially with how social media is today and the information age, it is literally impossible for any child at any age not to see something. So you have to be aware, and unfortunately that's what we make the proactive. So, and the best way, honestly, to defend against certain doubts is also to make them engage with the community. It must be. Be among other Muslims all the time. Make sure that they always have a reference point. But the more you distance yourself from that, the more likely it's going to be start forming doubts around that. So always make sure they're engaged. Even if they go to university, make sure they're the MSA. Encourage them to go to the MSA. Encourage them to be involved in the I know it's very broad also depends on the context of what they're consuming, what they're talking about, and what they're seeing, you know. So, at the dinner table, you can say, did you see anything today that you didn't understand or it confused you? Yeah. And they'll say, well, I saw this. Okay, well, let's talk about it. No problem. Yes, sir.
Better to be intentional about these things instead of waiting for them to open up or answer this kind of question, to actually yourself put it in a context where, like, how would you answer somebody who says this, or the question that existence of Allah or determinism or all of these issues like.
I think it's good for a certain age group. So, for example, around 15, 16, I think I would get into more of that kind of active apologetic discourse. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, let me answer this real quick. Oh, so the question was, do you think it's better to be proactive in the sense of actually engaging in a discourse? Like, how would you answer this doubt? Or how would you answer if an atheist asked you this question or something like that? So that's the question. And I think that is good for a certain age group who's more engaged in that sort of abstract discourse, but when they're kind of a little bit younger, it may be better just to sort of engage with them when they notice something. And you don't really want to push those sort of discussions because a lot of young kids, preteens especially, aren't really going to, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? They'll benefit to some degree, but they're more concerned about other things at that age. But I think as they become teens and a little older, those very abstract and deep discussions are more interesting to them. So yeah, I think that you can go about it that way, but really also look at what they're interested in talking about. So something that you think that they would be involved in, or something that's around them. So if they're going to university, for example, they're probably engaged with atheist ideas, counter Islamic ideas. They probably engage with a lot of feminist ideas. They probably engage with a lot of, so these are things that you can bring up directly because they've probably already seen it. If they're taking like a religious course or something like, what is it called now? Universal religion course or something. You talk about, did they talk about Hinduism today? Did they talk about Christianity today? Do you want to tell me what you think of it? Things like that. So, and I think that's the best approach. And something that I think a lot of people don't realize, especially Muslims, is that in our history, this is how we've generally been. The golden age of Islam was not us ignoring everyone. The golden age of Islam actually began as a result of Muslims translating all the works of all the kuffar nations around them, consuming what knowledge was beneficial, and then leaving the rest. We had libraries, hundreds of thousands of books full of kufr. Why? Because in those books of kufr, the Muslims found some benefit that they could utilize in science, mathematics, history, things like that. They were so strong in their faith and know that they could answer these things. They didn't care that they had these books. Well, they know, okay, 50 pages of this is nonsense, but on page 51, we can use that. So that's how they were. They were so confident. Oh, I apologize. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll go back over here. So,
but also to this point about the kids opening up for you, wouldn't also you role model this by you opening up to them about what happened in your day?
I think so too. And I'm being vague too because also different children have different personalities. There's different relationships between their parents in certain ways. So I mean, it's really up to the parents to also decide when it's a comfortable time. I would not necessarily push it on them because it could kind of stress them out or it could make them feel uncomfortable. So only do it when you feel like it's the right time. So for example, I mentioned the Target example. If your child notices the rainbow flag and goes or looks at it, maybe and concentrates and okay, maybe it's time to have a talk. What is this? What does this mean? What does it represent? What is it to Islam, etc. Find ways to engage in discussions in a natural, organic way. Because if you push, like I said, Western-minded youth, they have this mentality that, if it's something that's being forced on them, they start to run. Right? So, yes.
Yes, question. So, do you think that with regards to many of the doubts that many Muslim youth have, it's due to the fact that some Muslim youth especially use Islam more so for their identity, like Machiavellian Islam, rather than using Islam?
Say Machiavellian Islam?
Yeah.
That's a term that I've utilized.
Instead of using Islam for their principles,
Well, we have to be frank that there is a lot of Islam is utilized as an identity. I mean, just like many other ideologies. Unfortunately, there is, especially among, and be frank, immigrant communities in Western countries, there is a sense that Islam is more about an identity than it is about sort of principles. And this is sort of a reaction to an alien culture. It's a reaction, it's a fear of losing one's culture. And a lot of youth do grow up with that sentiment. I mean, you do see it. I've seen it myself. I mean, I know some kids who claim that they're apostates, but they don't even know the 5 pillars of Islam. They can't even tell you what Islam is. If you ask them like basic questions, they don't understand. And then you have to ask yourself, were they actually Muslims? Because what do they believe in if they don't even understand what it is, right? They don't know what Tawheed, they don't even know Allah, they know nothing. So they call themselves Muslim because they go through the motions, but is that following our faith? You know, these are things that we do have to address. So yes, that is a big issue. And we have to address that problem in our society and our community, where Islam is used simply as an identity to go against another culture, to sort of make yourself seem authentic, right? And yes, sorry. Oh, is these more questions? Okay, sure. Can you do it for me, please? Thank you. I'm sorry. Yes. Oh, are they all here? Okay, are these the only questions?
Yeah. So
Okay. So, I'm sorry, so was that, should I continue to maybe detail that a little bit more, or? Excuse me?
Yeah.
Okay, inshallah, I think that it is something that needs to be addressed. And how we do so is that we sort of inculcate a culture of learning among the society, because one of the things that I've noticed, especially in Islamic schools, and I'm not picking on anyone in particular, just ones that I've seen, and I don't know anything about this one. I know there's an Islamic school here, but that one of the problems is that I see, especially among the youth, is that their whole entire reason for education is to get a job, and only jobs that you can count on 5 fingers. Okay, so we all know what those jobs are. Okay, engineer, doctor, is it lawyer, businessman? I think there's something else. IT. Did I nail them all? Okay, I think I did. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. So, and that's fine. It's fine to be those things. It's halal. It's fine. It's normal. It's okay to want your children to be this way, right? But it seems to me that among many families, that this idea of education is only to gain status or material wealth, and that is unfortunate. And one of the things I like to tell a lot of these families and society in general, or our community in general, is that if you really want the golden age of Islam to come back, we need to stop emphasizing 5 employment opportunities, and we need to stop emphasizing education as being only for the goal of gaining a certain amount of money or status. Okay, we have to be more open to what education and knowledge are, right? And I think that this plays a role in the identity crisis, or this whole idea of Islam being only about identities, because we also treat Islamic education in the same manner, in many respects. It's great to want your children to be hafid. Okay, it's great you want them to memorize Quran, but if they don't understand the Quran, what benefit is that to them? They're reciting something that's accusing them. They're reciting. Imagine they're reciting something that is saying that you are going to hell for the action that you have just performed, and they have no idea. Maybe it's time that we start to inculcate a culture of learning that we used to have in our history. Learning for the sake of learning. Also among our sisters. I do not speak as a feminist. I speak as a traditional Muslim. And as a librarian, so it might be a little boring for you, but in actuality, some of the major librarians in our history were women. Actually, the greatest libraries in our tradition were run by women. Most of the libraries in Al-Andalus were run by women. So in fact, they were the gatekeepers of knowledge, believe it or not. And yet that's a profession we never talk about in our Ummah for some reason. But the idea of having education just for the sake of education is something that we need to also start emphasizing among our systems. We talk about, I've heard this, I'm not naming names, I'm not going to point at anyone. But, that's just, you don't need to have an education because your husband's going to be the one with the job. When did education become about just getting a job? What about her own understanding of the world? How it enriches her soul? How about when she has children and she can teach them about the world and enrich their soul with her knowledge? And what about the knowledge she may also give to her own husband who lacks something? Both secular and religious. Do we really have to be, why are we so concerned about education only in the monetary sense? This plays a huge role, because education plays a huge role in establishing one's understanding of themselves and the world, right? Oh, okay, I apologize. I do apologize. I know, I'm just, face ID. I don't have your face. Two questions, I apologize. Sisters, okay. Do you have a suggestion on any app or apps to keep tabs on what your kids are doing on their devices? I don't have anything that comes to mind immediately, but I would say that you shouldn't be giving them these devices at a certain age. I know that sounds a lot easier said than done, but a young child, especially a young teenager, should not be having a smartphone. There's no reason for that. I mean, there's just not, what are they going to do? They just need to call you, right? And maybe they're schoolmates or something, but they don't need to be scrolling through things at school. And I know that sounds being really restrictive, but honestly, if you knew, as I said, if you look at these studies on social media and stuff, you knew what it does to your personality, what it does to your psychology, especially at a young age when your hormones are going crazy and you're confused about life. You don't even know who you are, and you're reading up all these things and seeing all these things. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster, right? I just don't see a practical reason for a child to have a cell phone, or even a young teenager to have a smartphone. Okay, there's no reason for those functions to be even in their hand. I mean,
We had to get on the Chromebooks because of online school.
Oh, the online schooling?
It took me a while because I struggled and I wanted some control on it. But Chromebooks actually, they have a good function for parent control.
Parent controls, yeah.
It's really good, and I encourage all the parents to engage that or activate
If they have a smart device, then certainly there should be some apps, and so I'll actually research it myself to see what would be the best apps for that. That said, also you need to understand your kids are very smart. So even if you put restrictions on them, they might find a way around. There's something called a VPN. In many respects, they can find these things by just Googling them. Oh, how to get around this app, and there are like cracks and things they can do. Like, it's very simple. Or their friends already know about it. So I'm not saying that it's impossible, but I think the best way to do would be to restrict their access to certain technology at a certain age. And then secondly, if they have to have that technology or they're already in possession of it, you need to be made aware of what they're doing by simply engaging with them and their phone. Because usually a lot of these kids, thank you. A lot of children, they do certain things because they think their parents don't know how to access the technology, don't know how, or are unconcerned about what they're doing. Right? So, you'll find, usually, look, I'm going to be honest, no offense to the young kids and the teenagers, but you're not that smart. You think you are until your parents find out what you're doing, right? And then you're like, oh, and then you come up with really lame excuses, right? So you're smart enough to figure things are, around things. But if you think your parents are dumb, just see a father who's adamant about figuring out what their son or daughter is doing. Then you'll figure out real quick how smart your parents are. Okay. So yeah, make yourself engage with their life and be aware of what they're using. And even if you have to look at their phone, you have a right to do so. There's a certain point where you're responsible for what they're looking at. Now, of course, when they become adults, obviously they're going to be more independent. It's going to be much more difficult. But in the meantime, you have every right to look at see what they're engaged with, who they're talking to, both son and daughter. We also have to be clear here that there is no, in terms of the use of this technology, there's no differences between gender. Okay, both genders can do just as wrong with the technology. So be also very clear about this as well. And something else I wanted to emphasize, and I apologize I didn't mention it earlier. Sisters have also told me that they feel doubts or they feel rebellion against their parents because they feel like they're being treated differently than their brothers. Okay, so for example, their brothers are given more second chances. Maybe their brothers are not being punished as much, or maybe there's not as much fear over them, and that's also can be psychologically damaging to somebody's psyche when they feel that they're not getting an equal treatment with their parents. Because as a child, it doesn't matter what gender you are, you want your parents to love you with a maximum value, right? And if they perceive a slight, if they perceive an imbalance among their siblings, they will react extreme. Because losing their parents' disapproval is the most harming thing you can do to a child. Okay? Imagining that I'm not as worth as much to my parents. And I'm not saying that's the intent. I'm not saying that's the intent. I'm saying the perception. We need to make sure that's not the perception among our kids. Even if they're all the same gender, we need to make sure that all of them feel like they're equally appreciated, equally loved, equally respected, equally punished, equally everything, right? To the best of our ability. Because one thing that they notice, any difference they see, they will take that to heart in a very extreme manner. And it will build over time. And you don't want that.
We tend to treat girls better in the family, like going on trust.
More protective, yeah.
We won't discipline the girls as much as the boys. Is that
Well, it depends on the type of discipline you're talking about. But what I mean to say is that from what I've been approached by certain people, is that certain young sisters, is that they tell me that they feel as though their brothers are preferred over them for certain things, like education or in terms of how they're generally treated. If they happen to be mixing or be in a crowd or something, they tend to be scolded more than their brothers, etc. Or their brothers will do something wrong and they feel as though they're not adequately addressed compared to if they did something wrong. And I don't know, like I said, I'm not a woman, so I don't know. I've never experienced that myself. But I do know what sisters have told me, young girls have told me. And they have said, like, I feel like my parents are doing this and I don't feel it's fair. And so we have to, if they have that concern, that feeling, we need to reassure them. If that's not the case, right? But we need to address why they feel that way. Right? We need to engage them in that manner. So, and right now I feel like I'm being unjust to them right now because I'm not answering these questions. So I do apologize. If you give me one moment. Okay, I'll do the best I can. I apologize. How to let the child know that this is cultural belief and not Islamic, when another Muslim friend tells them something and how to explain it. Okay. Muslims will disagree on many things. Obviously, we're all quite diverse here in our perspectives. Not all of us are going to agree on what is necessarily Islamic, or what is cultural and what isn't. Right? But generally speaking, in order to deal with how a Muslim friend is engaging with your child, right, you need to. It's not an issue so much of them experiencing that difference of opinion. The fact of the matter is that you need to ask yourself a question: why are they taking that seriously over you to begin with? That's something that we need to ask. Is why are they affected by it? Is there something that maybe I'm doing that's giving them the impression that they can take that opinion or challenge me or consider that valid, right? And the best way to engage with that is not to simply say, oh, that person's wrong, or something. Say, okay, well, why do you think that way? To have conversation, to be more approachable. It's the same reason, it's the same way to deal with all of these doubts, to be more approachable. Because the moment they trust you, it doesn't matter what your friend says. It doesn't matter what your friend says. The moment they trust you as the person to go to, as the source of their answers, it doesn't matter what anyone says. You're the first person they'll talk to. Mom, Dad, I heard this today. What do you think? You know, that's what they should be doing. That's really where they need to be, what they need to be doing. Right? And we need to figure out how to inculcate that sort of culture with their own children. Is that they come to you. A stranger especially, not just a friend, a stranger they go to school with should not be influencing them more than you. At all. They should not be, oh, you know, my friend said this today, I just met them. And they, you know, that makes sense. No. The first thing they should do is like rushing to you and saying, is it what they said true? Can you tell me? That's what they should be doing. And inshallah, we can try to.
Well, we can take one more question very
Okay,
quickly,
sure.
sisters.
Okay.
I'm sure one very pertinent.
Okay, do you have another question?
Somebody can ask.
Sure, go ahead. Oh, do any sisters have any questions? It's okay. You can ask. You don't have to send messages. It's fine. No? Ali, do you have a question? Okay, so thank you very much, and I do want to apologize in advance. Actually, if I didn't seem coherent enough, inshallah, I'll be a little bit listed tomorrow. You can explain to them why. So okay.
So I'm afraid to check, obviously, you've got no idea what you went through the past 2 days. I actually missed like 2 flights.
I went on hijrah from
Yeah,
the United States to the United States.
Alhamdulillah. I knew about the mail making his piece. But anyway, so I think we already made a question, but we do have one-on-one session with the Sheikh tomorrow. I'll let you sign up. Okay, we will start Asadullah tomorrow. If anybody wants to sit with him, and we can get on the website, so gomissioner.com, and then you'll find there's a form you have to fill out in different time slots. They're very limited. I give you a heads up. So if you need to meet with them, please feel free to go to the website and check out. Other than that, for the youth, on Sunday, we will have a Q&A just for the youth. Open Q&A just for the youth. And the elbow part, you can also see the flyer at missional.com. And if you sign, then we'll be able to get in touch with you. And that's that. I think it's time on how many people that everything that is something you already did for yourself.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.